5.1.2, the Buddha said, monks, there are the 5 powers of a learner. What 5? The power of faith, saddha, of conscience or conscientiousness, hiri, of remorse, ottappa, of diligence, virya, and of wisdom, panya. And what, monks, is the power of faith, saddha? Herein, monks, the Aryan disciple has faith and believes in the enlightenment of the Tathagata, that of a truth he is the exalted one, Arahant, fully enlightened, replete with practice and knowledge, well gone one, world knower, incomparable tamer of tameable men, teacher of devas and men, the Buddha, exalted one. This, monks, is called the power of faith. Stop here for a moment. This word saddha, which we translate here as faith, can also mean confidence, trust, or unshakable faith. And this is not blind faith. It means having understood the Dhamma, having understood the teachings, then you have faith that the Buddha is enlightened. So to have faith, it means that you must learn, you must hear the suttas, either study them, read them, or hear the suttas and understand. And only when you have understood how logical is the Buddha's teaching, and the Buddha, in fact, if you study further on, you find the Buddha said not to believe blindly, even the Buddha's words himself, not to take it on faith, but to investigate and to find out whether they are reasonable. And slowly from understanding them, then you have this saddha, unshakable faith. And the Buddha continued, and what, monks, is the power of conscience or conscientiousness? Pali word is hiri. Herein, monks, the Aryan disciple is conscientious. He feels conscientious scruple when acting wrongly in deed, word, and thought, on entering on evil and wrong states. This, monks, is called the power of conscientiousness. And what, monks, is the power of remorse, ottappa? Herein, monks, the Aryan disciple is remorseful. He is remorseful when acting wrongly in deed, word, and thought, on entering on evil and wrong states. This, monks, is called the power of remorse. Stop here for a while. These two conditions, these two powers, learner's powers, called hiri and ottappa, they are translated sometimes differently in different books. And they are very important conditions for someone new, a learner on the spiritual path. The first one, conscience, is like a sense of shame, fear to do wrong. That's the meaning of hiri. Before a person does wrong, he has this fear of doing wrong, this sense of shame, so that will stop him from doing wrong. That's why we translate it as conscience. The second one is remorse. That means the ability to feel remorse at having done wrong. It's also a sense of shame at having done wrong. So these two things combine. One is the fear to do something wrong, and the second one is after doing wrong, having that remorse, the ability to feel shameful or remorseful about it. There are some people without this remorse, even after having done wrong, they don't feel remorseful. And if you don't feel remorseful, then you do the wrong again and again. And then the Buddha continued, and what, monks, is the power of diligence, virya? Herein, monks, the Aryan disciple, abiding in active energy, puts away all unskillful states and takes to skillful states. Steadfast and strenuous, he shirks not the burden of skillful states. This, monks, is called the power of diligence. I stop here for a moment. Our Buddha's teachings is always concerned with skillful living. Skillful living, not unskillful living. To live our life in a skillful way so that we can avoid unnecessary pain and suffering. For example, if you drink and drive, and then you end up with an accident, that could have been avoided if you did not drink and drive at the same time. So, in the same way, if we understand karma, we know that if we do something wrong, it's going to result in suffering for us later. So we avoid it from understanding of karma, how or what action leads to what result. So if we know that, then we avoid unskillful states. Unskillful states meaning states associated with greed, hatred, delusion or illusion. And that also means like conceit, jealousy, anger, etc., and like sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness, doubt, etc. Whereas skillful states is the reverse, the opposite. States of mind connected with renunciation, with loving kindness, with wisdom, humility, etc. And then the Buddha continued, and what monks is the power of wisdom? Herein monks, the Aryan disciple has wisdom. He is endowed with wisdom into the nature of growth and decay, with Aryan penetration of the way to the utter destruction of dukkha, or ill, or suffering. This monks is called the power of wisdom. These monks are the 5 powers of a learner. Wherefore, monks, you should train yourselves thus. We will become possessed of the learner's powers. Thus must you train yourselves, monks. So the last one is wisdom. Wisdom here is explained as being endowed with wisdom into the nature of growth and decay. The nature of growth, arising and decay, is the nature of the world. If you look into everything in the world, there is growth, arising and decay. Even something as hard as a metal, for example, an iron bridge. In those days, they used to make Bailey bridges, iron bridges. And even though it's the whole bridge is made of iron, so strong, after many years, you find due to rust, the action of the weather, rain and sunshine, etc., one day the whole bridge might collapse. And even you can see such a hard thing as iron can collapse. What more our body that is so soft. So that is the nature of everything in this world, because the nature of this world is impermanent. So if we have wisdom, we realize that everything arises and passes away due to conditions. That is the principle of dependent origination, dependent arising, how things arise and pass away, all due to conditions. And this person with wisdom can see the way to the utter destruction of dukkha. What is dukkha? Dukkha is another characteristic of this world. Sometimes it's translated as unsatisfactoriness, sometimes as suffering. And it means like growing old is suffering, is dukkha. Becoming sick is dukkha. Dying is dukkha. Not to get what you want is dukkha. To be separated from your loved ones is dukkha. To be near to those that you hate is also dukkha. In short, the Buddha said, the 5 aggregates of clinging, that which we associate with the self, the body, feelings, perception, volition, and consciousness, all that is dukkha. So these are the 5 powers of a learner, and these 5 powers are very important for somebody on the spiritual path. Without these 5 learner's powers, we cannot progress. The first one is to have confidence in the Buddha's teachings. Because the Buddha's teachings, although we call it Buddhism, it is just a brand we put. Buddha's teachings, the Dhamma, is something actually we don't have to put a brand, because it is reality itself. It is truth about existence. And because some of it can be found in other religions. But the Buddha, as you probably heard in one of the suttas, where the Buddha said that whether the Buddha appears or the Buddha does not appear, the fixed law of Dhamma applies to all of us. It has always been there. Just that the Buddha is enlightened and he shows it to us, something that is so obvious that we have not seen it. He shows it to us. Then we realize the nature of existence, the nature of the world, and how existence is unsatisfactory and how we can get out of suffering. So these are the 5 learner's powers. Then the next sutta is 5.1.5. The Buddha said, monks, whatsoever monk or nun disavows the training and returns to the lower life, 5 matters for self-blame and reproach from the standpoint of Dhamma come to him here and now. What 5? He thinks, in you there was verily no faith in skillful states, kusala Dhamma, no conscientiousness, no remorse, no diligence, and no wisdom into skillful states. Monks, whatsoever monk or nun disavows the training and returns to the lower life, these 5 matters for self-blame and reproach from the standpoint of Dhamma come to him here and now. Monks, whatsoever monk or nun lives the holy life in perfect purity, though with tearful face he cries in pain and distress, 5 matters for self-praise from the standpoint of Dhamma come to him here and now. What 5? He thinks, in you verily there was faith in skillful states, conscientiousness, remorse, diligence, and wisdom in skillful states. Monks, these 5 matters for self-praise come to him here and now. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says, if a monk or a nun disrobes and returns to the lower life, meaning the life of a lay person, then actually he did not cultivate or did not have the 5 learner's powers, and because of that he disrobed. Whereas another person, even though wearing the robes is painful, and even tears come to his eyes and he cries in pain and distress, yet if he still continues to wear the robes, then he can praise himself with these 5 learner's powers. That means he has these 5 learner's powers. Now, sometimes there are some people with very strong hindrances. They find it very difficult to wear the robe. What are these 5 hindrances? One is sensual desire. There are some people with very strong sensual desire, and it always disturbs them. Another one is ill will, a lot of anger. When you have a lot of anger, it's very difficult to live in a community of other monks or nuns. Then the third one is sloth and torpor. If you have a lot of sloth and torpor, it's very difficult to live the holy life. It's always you find it very difficult to make progress. The fourth one is restlessness and worry. Restlessness is something that is very difficult for new monks, because as a lay person, when you feel restless, you think, oh, what am I going to do tonight? I feel so restless. I can't stay in this house. All the 4 walls around me. I feel I have to climb up the walls. So what do? You go out and see a show. You go to town. You go to the beach. You just go out and do something. Whereas as a monk, you can't. You have to stay in the monastery. You are staying in a cave, you just have to stay in your cave, you just grit your teeth and bear it. That's why the Buddha said here, sometimes even with a tearful face, you still bear it. That's then you can praise yourself, because this is a stage where monks and nuns have to go through. If you can grit your teeth and bear it, later on, you get used to it, you master it, then it doesn't disturb you later on. However, you find sometimes some monks, they don't overcome the hindrances, and even after 5 years they disrobe, or some after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, some even 40 years also they still disrobe, and because the 5 hindrances disturb them. And so the only way to overcome the hindrances, according to the Buddha, is to cultivate samadhi, cultivate concentration, one-pointedness of mind. And when you have one-pointedness of mind, the 5 hindrances are abandoned. The other thing about these 5 learner's powers, the first one is having unshakable faith. And as I said before, you can only have it if you have a good understanding of the suttas, the Buddha's discourses. That's why the Buddha always called his disciples savakas. And when he uses the word Savakas, disciples, he assumes that all of them are Aryans. That's why in the suttas, the Buddha always talks about the Aryan disciple, Aryan disciple. And so, to me, the suttas are so important that when we come into the Dhamma, into the holy path, the spiritual path, we have to study the suttas and understand, because from understanding, then we have this unshakable faith. And when you have unshakable faith, the Buddha said, you have entered the stream. You will never be reborn into the woeful plains again. You're into the spiritual path. You have entered the spiritual path. Without a proper understanding of the suttas, you still have not entered the stream. You are still outside the door. You have not entered the door yet. So that's why I always stress the importance of learning the suttas. Now we come to another sutta, 5.2.14. The Buddha said, there are these 5 powers. What 5? The power of faith, the power of diligence, the power of mindfulness or recollection, the power of concentration, and the power of wisdom. These are the 5 powers. What is the power of energy? What is the power of faith? The power of faith is just as before, what we read before, that the Aryan disciple has faith and believes in the enlightenment of the Tathagata, etc. And what is the power of energy? That also we heard before. The power of energy is the Aryan disciple abiding in active energy, puts away all unskillful states and takes to skillful states. He shirks not the burden of skillful states. This is the power of diligence. What is the power of mindfulness? Herein, monks, the Aryan disciple is mindful or collected. He is endowed with the highest mindfulness and discrimination. He remembers and calls to mind what was said and done long ago. This, monks, is called the power of mindfulness. And what is the power of concentration? Herein, monks, the Aryan disciple, secluded from sense desires, secluded from unwholesome mental states, enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of seclusion. With the stilling of applied and sustained thought, he enters upon and abides in the second jhana, which has internal self-confidence and singleness of mind, without applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of concentration. And with the fading away of delight, he abides in equanimity, and collected and mindful, feeling pleasure with the body, he enters upon and abides in the third jhana, on account of which the noble ones say, he has a joyful abiding, who has equanimity and is collected. And with the abandoning of bodily pleasure and the previous abandoning of bodily pain, by the fading away of grief and joy, he enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and has complete purity of recollection or mindfulness and equanimity. This, monks, is called the power of concentration. And what is the power of wisdom? It's as before. The Aryan disciple has wisdom. He is endowed with wisdom into the nature of growth and decay, with Aryan penetration of the way to the utter destruction of dukkha. This is the power of wisdom. These, monks, are the 5 powers. That's the end of the sutta. Here we come to the standard 5 powers. The earlier one was the learner's powers. This is the standard 5 things which the Buddha calls the powers. And the first one, faith, we have already dealt with. The second one is energy, we've also dealt with. Third one is mindfulness. The word is sati. This word sati comes from a word which is spelled S-M-R-T-I, smrti or something, and it means to remember. So basically, sati means to remember, and generally people like to use the word mindfulness. But if you look at this definition of the word sati, it says the Aryan disciple is mindful. He is endowed with the highest mindfulness and discrimination. He remembers and calls to mind what was said and done long ago. He remembers and calls to mind what was said and done long ago. So this is the ability to remember. So when we use the word mindfulness, you must know mindfulness has two meanings. One is to be generally mindful, aware what is happening around you. That is not the real meaning of the word sati. The second meaning of mindfulness is the ability to recollect, to remember. And that is the more correct definition according to the words here. He remembers and calls to mind what was said and done long ago. So this we have to remember, because in the word sati in the suttas, the Buddha says that sati is concerned with remembering the nature of our body and our mind, the five aggregates. Body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, because that is where our problem lies. That is where our ego is tied up to. We always associate the self with these five things. So we must always to remember to look and see that these five things are not the self. Then the power of concentration is the standard definition of how the four jhanas are attained. You find the Buddha's description of samadhi is always connected with these four jhanas, or sometimes it's just one-pointedness of mind. And this definition, as explained here, is the proper definition of concentration. Nowadays we have to be very careful, because certain teachers, their definition of concentration, they use such words like vipassana jhana. When you look into the definition of vipassana jhana, it means the mindfulness from object to object. And mindfulness from object to object is just sati, is just mindfulness. Just mindfulness or recollection, and it is the seventh factor of the Aryan Eightfold Path, whereas the four jhanas are the eighth factor, and these are two separate factors. You must not confuse and mix them up and think they are one factor. It's very important to realize this. Any definition of samadhi must be based on these four definitions of the four jhanas, how you enter the four jhanas and what qualities the jhana has. So if anybody teaches that such and such is jhana, you have always to compare with this definition here in the powers of the four jhanas, of attaining the four jhanas. Sutta number 5.2.15. The Buddha said, monks, there are these five powers. What five? The power of faith, the power of diligence, the power of mindfulness or recollection, the power of concentration, and the power of wisdom. These are the five powers. And where, monks, is the power of faith to be seen? In the four factors of stream winning, there is the power of faith to be seen. And where, monks, is the power of diligence to be seen? In the four right efforts, there is the power of diligence to be seen. And where, monks, is the power of mindfulness or recollection to be seen? In the four intense states of recollection, satipatthana, there is the power of mindfulness to be seen. And where, monks, is the power of concentration to be seen? In the four jhanas, there is the power of concentration to be seen. And where, monks, is the power of wisdom to be seen? In the four Aryan truths, there the power of wisdom is to be seen. These, monks, are the five powers. That's the end of the sutta. The first one, the Buddha talks about the faith, saddha, or confidence. The Buddha says it is to be seen in the four factors of stream winning. What are the four factors of stream winning? The first one is the faith in the Buddha, unshakable faith in the enlightenment of the Buddha. The second one is the unshakable faith or confidence in the Dhamma. The third is the confidence or faith in the Sangha. And the fourth is the factor of virtue, sila, having pure sila. These are the four factors of Sotapanna. So there, the power of faith is to be seen. And where is, monks, is the power of diligence to be seen? In the four right efforts. What are four right efforts? I think if some of you have remember, We talked about the 4 right efforts earlier in the chapter of the Force, where the 4 right efforts refer to the effort to restrain, to abandon, to develop and to nurture. To restrain is to restrain unwholesome thoughts which have not arisen. We restrain them from arising. The effort to abandon is to abandon those unwholesome states or thoughts which have arisen. And then the effort to develop is to develop unarisen wholesome states or wholesome thoughts. And the effort to nurture is to nurture or develop further wholesome states that have already arisen, wholesome or skillful states. That is the power of diligence. That means we have to always be mindful of the state of our mind to see whether we have wholesome thoughts, wholesome states of mind. And where is the power of recollection to be seen? In the 4 instant states of recollection. This satipatthana, there are different translations for it. Firstly, the word sati, remember the last time we talked on the suttas, the last sutta, the Buddha defined sati as the ability to remember and call to mind what was said and done long ago. Remember and call to mind what was said and done long ago. That is the real definition of sati, and there's about 8 suttas that repeats this definition. And you remember I said that if you use the word mindfulness, then you have to remember that it is not so much the mindfulness of what is happening day to day, what is sensed at the 6 sense doors, but to remember. And to remember what? To remember the body, the nature of the body and the mind, that it is not I, not me, not mine. And so that is sati. And then patthana comes from, to my interpretation, patthana comes from 2 words, pa and thana. Pa, if you look into the Pali dictionary, it means setting forth and also going beyond. So going beyond also refers to extreme condition, intense, extreme or intense. So the word pa can be used for extreme or intense. Thana literally means standing still, and because of that it's also used for a condition, a state, a situation. So the word pa thana can mean extreme condition, or extreme state, or intense state, intense condition. That is why my mind, thana means an intense state. So satipatthana means an intense state of recollection or intense state of mindfulness. And this satipatthana is closely linked to the jhanas. Why do we say that satipatthana is closely linked to the jhanas? Because of 2 suttas. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Venerable Anuruddha, the Arahant Anuruddha, was asked what is the cause of his psychic power, and he said that the cause of his psychic power is satipatthana. Normally when we refer to psychic power, we associate it with the jhanas, intense state of jhanas, deep states of concentration, And here he says that it is satipatthana. So satipatthana is in a way synonymous with the jhanas. And this is again can be seen in another sutta where it is stated that the sign of samadhi is satipatthana, or the sign of jhana is satipatthana. In other words, when you have the jhanas or you have perfect concentration, then you automatically have satipatthana. That is why in the suttas, in the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha said, cultivate satipatthana. But after you have attained satipatthana, the Buddha said, abandon the practice of satipatthana. That's something to be found in the suttas. So, before you attain satipatthana, you practice to attain it. And when you get it, you also get the samadhi. The jhanas, and once you have attained the jhanas, you don't have to make an effort to be intensely mindful. It becomes automatically, a person with the jhanas becomes naturally mindful. And then the power of concentration is to be seen in the 4 jhanas. And the last sutta, the last time we talked on the suttas, we defined the 4 jhanas. And the power of wisdom is to be seen in the 4 Aryan truths. When you have wisdom, you will understand the 4 Aryan truths. So that's the end of the sutta. Now we come to sutta number 5.3.22. The Buddha said, monks, that a disrespectful and unruly monk, not dwelling in harmony with his fellows in the holy life, will keep the minor precepts. Such a thing is not possible. That he will keep the learner's dhammas without keeping the minor precepts is not possible. That he will keep the aggregate of moral conduct without the learner's dhamma is not possible. That he will keep the aggregate of concentration without moral conduct is not possible. That he will attain the aggregate of wisdom without concentration, such a thing is not possible. But monks, that a respectful and controlled monk, dwelling in harmony with his fellows in the holy life, will keep the minor precepts, such a thing is possible. That he, keeping the minor precepts, will keep the learner's dhammas, such a thing is possible. And that he, keeping the learner's dhammas, will keep the moral conduct, such a thing is possible. That he, keeping the moral conduct, will attain concentration, such a thing is possible. And he, attaining concentration, will attain wisdom, such a thing is possible. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha is trying to say that firstly, a monk has to be respectful and controlled, and dwelling in harmony with his fellows in the holy life. Such a monk will be one who is sincere about the holy path, who is sincere about practicing the spiritual path. Such a person, it is possible that he is willing to cultivate the minor precepts. And when he cultivates the minor precepts, he will progress to keep the learner's dharma, the learner's code of things that must be practiced. And then if he does that, then he will progress to attain or keep the moral conduct. And when he keeps the whole aggregate of moral conduct, then he will attain concentration. And when he attains concentration, he will attain wisdom. Such a thing is possible. But the reverse is not possible. That means if he is unruly, then he will not be able to keep the minor precepts. And such a person will not be able to keep the learner's dhammas, will fail to keep the moral conduct. And because of that, he will fail to attain concentration. And a person who fails to attain concentration, the Buddha said, it is impossible that he will attain wisdom. You see here that the final part, that without attaining concentration, a person cannot get wisdom. And if you look into other suttas, you'll find the reason is that the Buddha said, without abandoning the hindrances, we cannot get wisdom. And the way to abandon the hindrances is to attain concentration. The other thing we'd like to know about this sutta is that this type of monk, the disrespectful and unruly monk, not in harmony with his companions in the holy life, is a type of monk who has no hiri ottappa. Earlier, I think you heard me talking about the learner's powers. We talked about hiri ottappa. Hiri is a term which means conscience or conscientiousness. It means a monk who is has a sense of shame, is afraid to do wrong. And ottappa is a sense of remorse. If a monk does something wrong, he feels remorse. There are some people who don't feel remorse for the wrong that they have done. And so such a monk with a sense of shame, then only he can progress. But a monk without a sense of shame, not fearing to do evil, and after doing evil not remorseful, he cannot progress in the holy life. And also you see in this, the few steps here in the sutta, that it is a gradual path. The holy life is a gradual path. No step is to be missed out. First, a monk got to be sincere, he got to be respectful, harmonious monk, then he will progress to keeping the minor precepts, and then will progress to keeping the learner's dhammas, and from there the whole aggregate of moral conduct, and from there to concentration, to wisdom. It is a gradual training that the Buddha expects in the holy life.